This is a Fox News alert. A shocking verdict, frankly an inexplicable verdict, in the Kate Steinle murder trial. A California jury has just found an illegal alien not guilty on all counts, 3 separate counts, potential counts of murder, except for illegal gun possession, for which he was convicted. Fox's Claudia Cowan is live in San Francisco with all the latest details on this. Claudia?
Well, Tucker, this jury deliberated almost 30 hours, and there was growing speculation among some of us who've been covering this case that there might be a deadlocked jury and a mistrial. But soon after they asked the judge to handle the gun that was used to kill Kate Steinle, just shortly after that, they reached a verdict. And as you mentioned, it is a shocking verdict. Not guilty of murder in the first or second degree, not guilty of involuntary manslaughter, not guilty of assault with a semi-automatic weapon. So a big win for the public defender in this case. His name is Matt Gonzalez. Shortly after the verdict was read, he came out into the hallway to address the throng of reporters who have been waiting for this verdict to come down, or a verdict. And he almost immediately took aim at President Trump, saying he's bracing for the tweets, but just wait. Listen to what he said.
Those who might criticize this verdict, there are a number of people that have commented on this case in the last couple of years. The Attorney General of the United States, the President and Vice President of the United States. Let me just remind them that they are themselves under investigation by a special prosecutor in Washington, D.C., and they may themselves soon avail themselves of the presumption of innocence and beyond a reasonable doubt standard. Reflect on that before they compare the result in this case.
Matt Gonzalez came directly over to talk to me as soon as he left the Hall of Justice, and he said this is not a night for celebrating by any means, but he said that he feels that this jury reached the right verdict given the circumstantial evidence that was brought into this trial. There was no testimony about the defendant's criminal history or the fact that he was a multiple felon and deportee on track for his 6th deportation from the United States. The jury was not allowed to consider any of that. And the defense really painted a case here that this was an unintentional discharge of a loaded weapon that happened to be on a popular tourist pier on July 1st, 15. And but for the ricochet of the bullet, Kate Steinle would still be alive. So the jury clearly pouring over a lot of evidence here to reach this verdict. It will be roundly attacked, Tucker, as we know. Matt Gonzalez says he doesn't care.
So, Claudia, you've been covering this. I just want to make sure we've got a couple of our facts right before we move into the analysis part of the program. So, this guy had 7 felony convictions. He was a homeless, undocumented immigrant, as they say in San Francisco. He fired the gun 3 times. It was a stolen gun, and it went off 3 times. And his initial explanation was he was shooting sea lions, and then changed his explanation to say it went off accidentally 3 times. Is that all right?
No, Tucker. The gun was fired once. He gave conflicting statements to police, and the defense again poked holes in his muddled confession to police because Mr. Garcia Zarate gave statements that were then clearly proven to be wrong or false. For instance, at one point he told police he went over to Kate Steinle, but surveillance video shows that that didn't happen. And there were also issues taken with some of the police translations. So perhaps he didn't say he was shooting at sea lions. Matt Gonzalez raised a reasonable doubt, certainly for this jury, but the gun only fired once. Now, after it fired, Mr. Zarate kicked the gun into the water. The prosecution said that shows evidence of guilt, but the defense said no, he kicked it into the water because it fired on its own and he was scared and he panicked, and so he kicked it in the water. So 2 totally different theories as to what happened, but yes, the gun only fired once.
So the gun was stolen from a federal agent out of a vehicle in downtown San Francisco. His contention was, Zarate's claim was, he found it somehow, somewhere?
Yeah, Mr. Zarate was never charged with stealing that gun. That was never a part of this case. It had been stolen from the parked car of a federal BLM ranger 4 days earlier, not far from the pier. But yes, Zarate's defense was that he was sitting on a bench. He looked down under the bench that was swiveling. He was swiveling on the pier, and there was a bundle, a rag, a T-shirt. And when he bent down to pick it up to see what it was, the gun fired. And again, part of the defense was the trigger pull on this 40 caliber Sig Sauer pistol was so light, just barely the barest amount of pressure would cause it to fire.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, as any gun owner can attest. Claudia, thank you for that. I appreciate it, clearing that up. Well, with reaction to this verdict, Mark Stein joins us tonight. This does, I mean, it just reminds you of a verdict 20 years ago in a case that was equally politicized, the O.J. Simpson murder trial, where the defense attorneys made it a referendum on larger injustice in American society. I want to read you a quote from one of the lawyers representing this man, in my view, is clearly a murderer, was just acquitted, as we're reporting. He said, and I'm quoting now, "This case is used to foment hate, division, and a program of mass deportation." So really, it sounds like this whole thing was recast as a political statement rather than a murder trial. So that, I mean, that's kind of the end of justice, isn't it? I mean, if trials can be subverted by national politics, then there's no hope for justice, right?
Well, I think it is a miscarriage of justice in the profoundest sense, in that Kate Steinle is dead because she went for a walk in a popular destination in her own city, and her parents will never see anybody convicted for that crime. There's no dispute. I mean, this is slightly different from the O.J. case, where at least he pretended to be looking for the real killers for the last 20 years. There's no dispute that this guy actually fired the shot or picked up the gun that then shot itself, and that this gunshot killed Kate Steinle. And there's no dispute either that this man should not have been in the country, that in fact he had been deported 6 times. And to go back to the old line, you know, about the jobs Americans won't do, every society has a proportion of murderers. Murder is a job that Americans will do, just as Dutchmen will do or Slovenes will do. You don't need to import foreigners to add to your murder population. No, this guy had a grade 2 education. We're told that the reason he got off is apparently because he's too stupid to understand what the cops were saying to him. So he gave conflicting answers about treading on the gun, finding the gun, firing at sea lions. He didn't understand. Why are we importing, and why is one political party, the entire bureaucracy, and 2/3 of the remaining political party fetishizing and sentimentalizing immigrants who can't speak the language with a grade 2 education, and setting up competing jurisdictions in this country that protect them at the expense of American citizens?
Right. Well, because they provide lower wages and handy voting blocks for those parties. So, but there's a massive cost, as you're pointing out, and as our viewers, of course, are well aware. This case gave rise to Kate's Law, as you know, much debated. But the reason it did was because the San Francisco authorities let this guy go, even after being asked by the feds to hold him for deportation. Right. They refused. So I guess it all adds up to a picture of not just, you know, treating illegal immigrants as you would American citizens, but giving them, in effect, better treatment, special privileges because they're here illegally. I don't know. I can't. It's very hard to imagine that an American citizen in Zarate's position would have been acquitted on all these charges.
No, this is basically a lifelong career criminal, and the justification for letting him go is that there's no evidence of violent crime, just non-violent crime. But the very term sanctuary city is designed to shut down the argument, because who do you give sanctuary to? You give sanctuary to refugees, to those fleeing injustice. How can there be something called a sanctuary city if it was holding up a place for criminals to hold up. The very term is designed to shut down the debate. And the reason Donald Trump is president is because he declined to operate with those constraints. Most of the other Republican nominees 2 years ago, the Jeb Bushes and Lindsey Grahams and all the rest of it, were cowed by that kind of language, by Sanctuary City and all the rest of it. And Donald Trump, in fairness, recognized. I mean, I weep for Kate Steinle's parents tonight. I do not know how I could go on living in that city if, God forbid, my daughter were to be shot by someone who should never have been in the country in the first place, and is actually being protected by the entire bureaucracy, political, media class of the country at the expense of American citizens.
That's exactly right. Really quickly, it's hard to imagine now, but 2 years ago when this happened, the behavior of the city of San Francisco, allowing this guy to go free in the face of requests from the feds to hold him, that was denounced by Hillary Clinton in the middle of the presidential race. Things have changed so much in 2 years in the Democratic Party. I wonder how many Democratic office holders will criticize his verdict tomorrow.
Yeah, and if you remember, Bernie Sanders championed American citizens and American workers. It's not going to be that way in the 2020 campaign. They've moved just in 2 years.
Pretty stunning. Mark Stein, thank you for that perspective.
Thanks, Tucker.
We'll have more on the Steinle case and the remarkable and, in fact, nauseating verdict throughout the hour. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., Fox and Friends will have our first reaction out of the White House. Kellyanne Conway with that. Now to tonight's other big stories. Disturbing details about the culture at NBC News continue to come out following yesterday's surprise firing of Matt Lauer, the longtime host of the Today Show. In the wake of his firing, NBC head Andrew Lack released a statement saying that the sexual harassment complaint against Lauer was, quote, the first complaint about his behavior in the over 20 years he's been at NBC. But now other reports say that is false. It's a lie. A detailed investigation published yesterday by Variety says multiple women indeed complained to NBC News executives about Lauer's behavior over the years, but they were ignored. Raman Satuda and Elizabeth Wegmeister wrote the Variety story, the often quoted one, and they join us tonight. So, Elizabeth, first to you. The statements from NBC changed. It was noted a lot today. The statements yesterday, the first one said, there have been no complaints that we're aware of, and the second one said that current management has been aware of. Is that a significant change, and what would account for that?
That's actually what we had been hearing consistently when we were reporting this, that they kept saying at NBC, the current management, the current regime. Ramin and I, as we reported this story, we spoke to many different sources, many different women who have been there for ranging years of Lauer's career. So we have spoken to women that were there from the current, regime and the old regime. So with NBC saying that they were only aware of one claim, to us, really, whether it's the current or the old regime doesn't really matter, because we had heard that there were multiple claims.
Yeah, and I mean, so far you have the definitive account, I think, that I've seen of what was going on there. So, Ramin, why haven't we heard directly from Andy Lack or Noah Oppenheim, who's the head of the news division, on this, to publicly clarify, to sit down and explain what they knew?
I think that's a fair question to ask as a journalist, and I think that two reporters that have been covering this story pretty aggressively, we would like to interview either of them. So if either of them would like to sit down with us to talk about the statement that was put out yesterday and the use of the word current executives, that would be great. And current management,
you'd like to interview them, of course, so would I. But I'd also think, since you have the biggest repository we know of information on this subject, they'd want to interview you, too, for their internal investigation. Have they called you?
They have not. And Tucker, going back to that use of the word current management, according to our discussions with NBC, they are actually defining that in a very narrow circle of only a few people. And so, according to our reporting, there are people that work at the Today Show, staffers, producers, anchors, current and previous anchors of the Today Show that were aware that there had been complaints about Matt Lauer's alleged conduct toward women that made women uncomfortable and where he sexually harassed women that he worked with.
Yeah, I mean, I think your piece nails that. I mean, it's really clear in reading it that you have the goods on that. What's interesting, though, this is, by my count, the third event at NBC and NBC News where we were supposed to get some kind of internal investigation on the results. You first had the leaking of the Access Hollywood tape during the last campaign, and then the question of, why did Andy Lack and Noah Oppenheim squelch the Harvey Weinstein story? And we haven't really gotten a straight answer on either one of those, or have we? Have I missed it?
No, we don't have an answer on either one of those.
Do you expect that we're going to get a clear accounting in this case?
I think that we may not get a clear account unless staffers start to talk about what's going on. I think it's important, and there are questions there are questions about if the Ronan Farrow story didn't air because of these allegations. There are questions about what NBC staffers knew at what time. There are questions about why this conduct was allowed to go on for so long. And these are all things that we're reporting.
What we will say, too, is we have had, since our story is posted, we have had many more people reach out to us and encourage us to continue to look into not just Matt Lauer, but NBC as a whole. And, of course, we are going to be doing that.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who work there, and some of them are good people, and they're horrified by this. Elizabeth, just sum up quickly the tone of the conversations that you're having with NBC employees now.
The conversations that we are having with NBC employees, is that what you said?
Yeah, what's their view of this? It looks, from your reporting, like the network covered up abuse that was going on for an awfully long time. How do people who work there feel about that?
People are really shocked right now. I mean, when Matt Lauer was fired yesterday, we spoke to many sources. We're not going to say if we spoke to people, currently within NBC or former NBC employees, but people were really shocked that he was fired because of the power that he held there. They really never thought that he would go away. And of course, with that comes the people that would be protecting Matt Lauer, who would be his bosses. So people there are really shocked. And I think that they're also waiting for answers, as Ramin said.
Yeah, it's relatively easy to fire Matt Lauer. It's the executives who protected him, I think, might be more interesting. Ramin, Elizabeth, thank you. Great reporting.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you,
a public service. Matt Lauer's firing was a surprise, but somebody here at Fox said months ago there were predators lurking over there. She joins us next.
Premieres tonight at 10 on Comedy Central.
Matt Lauer's firing the other day surprised most people, but not everyone. Melissa Francis co-hosts Fox's After the Bell, which is a great show. All the way back in April of this year, she said several television networks were full of sexual predators and that managers knew exactly who those predators were. Melissa Francis has been in TV a long time, so she would know. She joins us tonight. Not that long, but
yeah,
long
careful,
enough to
careful,
know.
Tucker. Yeah.
So you said, I remember exactly when you said this.
Yeah.
Just restate what you said and explain why you said it.
So I had the bad fortune of going out to promote my book, Lessons from the Prairie, the day after Bill O'Reilly was fired from our network. So when I went to other networks to do the tour, and Hoda and Kathy Lee were kind enough to have me on their morning show, one of the questions everyone asked me, which is fair, we would do the same thing. They said to me, what the heck is going on over at Fox? And I said, we're going through a period, it's really painful, and we're embarrassed by what's going on and we're working on it, but I have something to tell you. Why you're throwing stones at us and saying, is this part of the Fox culture? What does it have to do with what's going on over here? I think you know that your network is full of predators as well, as are all of them. These people exist at every single network, and I could tell you who they are, and I bet you know who they are. And, I said this to a lot of different news outlets as I went out there. And, at the time, I have to say, when I was at NBC, I had colleagues who I knew of who were assaulted by people sexually. And, one woman who was a friend of mine came to me in tears, and I said, you need to go report this. I've seen you in tears after this incident. I would be happy to support you. And she said, I don't think they'll do anything about it. And I said, well, call Gloria Allred. We're in the media. Have a news conference, stand out there on the street corner. And this woman in particular, who I have a ton of respect for, said, and I'll never work in this industry again. And I've worked really hard to get to this point, and I don't want to throw away my whole career. And there were others who were assaulted and who were harassed. And those people, some are still at NBC, and others have gone on to the other big networks.
What about the people who committed these acts?
Those are the people,
and they're still at NBC,
and the other networks. I want to be clear. It's not an NBC problem. It's not a Fox problem.
No, that's right.
It's a world. I think we're learning. It's not about any political persuasion. It's not about a network. It's not about. This is one of our makeup artists said. This is happening at the post office. This is is happening at the, sanitation department. It's everywhere, but people are paying attention to it in certain industries because it's more interesting. But I would say this. The people who committed these acts still work at these networks. And these women have been afraid to come forward. They need to know that they can. My husband said to me at the time, why haven't more women come out at other networks? And I said, I don't know. I hope it comes to that. I hope they feel like they'll be heard and they come out. But those men still work there. And I think I'm sure their names are come out. It's not my place to name them because I wasn't the one assaulted.
No, I'm fully aware of what you're talking about. Melissa, thank you. Thank you for that. That was prescient, to put it mildly.
Thank you.
Well, one of the people happiest about Matt Lauer's departure could be Hillary Clinton and her supporters. Weirdly, we'll explain why in just a minute. This is a Fox News alert. An illegal alien deported 5 times has been found not guilty in the murder of Kate Steinle. Jose Zarate shot and killed Steinle, that's beyond dispute, as she walked with her father on a San Francisco pier. She died in her father's arms. After 6 days of deliberations, though, a jury found Zarate guilty only of illegally possessing a firearm, acquitting him on a number of murder and manslaughter charges, inexplicably. We're tracking the president on Twitter for his reaction. We'll continue to follow the aftermath of this verdict, because there will be one. Well, it's easy to see the big winner in the downfall of Matt Lauer. It's Hillary Clinton. What? In 2016, Lauer moderated the Commander-in-Chief Forum, in which he held separate half-hour interviews with then-candidates Clinton and Trump. According to Clinton supporters, Lauer was too easy on Trump and far too tough on Hillary Clinton.
You were communicating on highly sensitive topics. Why wasn't it more than a mistake? Why wasn't it disqualifying if you want to be commander-in-chief? Were some of the emails sent or received by you referring to our drone program, our covert drone program? Some of the emails you sent and received happened while you were overseas, and Director Comey also said that while they have no proof, we assess that it is possible that hostile actors gained access to Secretary Clinton's personal email accounts.
Look at how much she hates him in that tape. It's visible. In her book, What Happened, Clinton herself says she, quote, fantasized about attacking Lauer because of his alleged bias. Perhaps his firing is a serviceable substitute. Philippe Reins is a former Hillary Clinton spokesman and a longtime advisor to her, and he joins us tonight. Philippe, thanks for coming on.
No, thank you, Tucker.
So, I'm trying to. I remember I watched that when it happened, and I thought, if I, who obviously disagrees with Hillary Clinton on everything, had asked her those questions, I doubt she would have been half as offended. I always thought she was mad at Matt Lauer because he was supposed to be part of the group. Like, he's a fellow liberal. He works at NBC, and he had the temerity to ask her hard questions. That was the sin.
I don't think so. They have a history going back a long way, so I think it was on his show that she blamed the vast right-wing conspiracy that I'm sitting in the middle of.
Never forget it.
And I think she was braced for a tough interview, and she's not upset, and she wasn't upset that her interview was tough. What was unnerving and baffling to us was the disparity between her half hour and the next half hour. And I think, in hindsight, you called it finally we won. I wouldn't put it that way, but it is a little clearer than it was a year ago.
So part of it, I would say, having interviewed President Trump a number of times, he's a tough interview. It's hard. It's hard to interview President Trump. Many people have had that experience. Maybe that was part of it. It's hard to believe, though, that Matt Lauer went soft on Donald Trump because he's somehow like a secret right-winger.
No, I don't think that's what it is at all. I think there are a couple of things at play. First, I think you have a lot of people in the media who have since all but acknowledged that they thought Hillary Clinton would be president, and therefore she needed to be vetted harder. Right. And yes, I've seen a lot of tape of President Trump. I had the misfortune or fortune of playing him in debate prep. And yes, he's an expert in avoiding the answers, but that doesn't excuse not asking tough questions. So when he looks at then Mr. Trump and says, so tell me, how are you going to get ready to be president if you win? That's a little bit of a softball as opposed to, well, what do you say to people who say you don't have any experience and you're not ready? And again, it's not that she wanted an easy interview. I mean, the woman goes through life with tough interviews. It's you want a little bit of balance.
So I just see a theme here that I've seen, I don't know, since I covered the '92 campaign 25 years ago, where Hillary Clinton simultaneously bills herself as the toughest human being in the world and plays the victim at exactly the same time. They're being mean to me, it's biased, they don't like me because I'm a woman, they don't like me because my husband, they don't like me because they're right wing. Why always the excuses and complaints?
I don't think they're excuses and complaints. I think they are observations. You know, we might not be 100% right when we say these things, but we're not 100% wrong. You know, let's just assume that we're right about these criticisms every now and then, and we're not crazy people. And I think this is a great example of a time that is very hard to say that there wasn't a very odd disparity. I don't think his colleagues or his network would take any issue with that.
Right. I mean, I think what's
true. And the rest of what you'd call the liberal media also hammered.
Well, they never liked Hillary Clinton. I mean, they loved her positions on abortion.
But they hammered Matt Lauer.
They're all committed, obviously, to abortion and immigration and all the things. They agree with her on all that. But they never liked her personally, and she never treated them well, to be honest. And you were part of that. I would say, yelling at reporters and
stuff. I've always been a pussycat.
Yes, right. But again, it gets back to the point. Do genuinely strong people complain about unfair coverage constantly?
Well, I mean, this is not exactly the question you're asking, but I think given the news, that's an interesting question, because talking to someone like Matt Lauer, with what we know now in hindsight, he might not exactly enjoy talking to strong women who are going to push back. He seems to be a little bit more used to...
Oh, come on! The strong... But if she's so strong, why is she always whining about bias?
She's not whining. Is there bias? Is there no bias in the world?
There's tons of bias.
Is there no harassment in the world?
There's tons of bias in the world.
Well, some of it comes her way every now and then.
But if I taught my children to feel as persecuted as Hillary Clinton clearly feels, they'd be on the psychiatrist's couch. You know what I mean?
Well, she herself said sometimes she thinks she should be on the psychiatrist's couch, and she opted for Chardonnay instead. But it is a baffling... look back at that.
It's interesting, and the response is interesting. Philippe, thank you for that.
No, thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Well, you probably heard about the videos that the president retweeted. Did you know the woman who shared them could go to prison for her views? What happened to free speech? We'll tell you next. President Trump enraged coastal America yesterday when he retweeted 3 videos being circulated by a woman called Jada Franson, deputy leader of Britain First. It's a nationalist group in the UK. Trump was criticized also by the British Prime Minister, Theresa May. The press in both countries declared him a fascist or worse.
This morning, the president started his day by promoting anti-Muslim fascist propaganda, retweeting videos posted by the leader of a British hate group called Britain First.
Jada Franson. She is known in the UK for spreading anti-Muslim and racist videos.
There's so many levels of this that are so ridiculous. The president retweeting someone who was arrested, a hate speech person.
Today, the president of the United States once again embraced the message of racist, bigoted bullies.
Subtle. Of course, there's nothing actually fascist about retweeting a video, but there is creeping fascism out there. It's the steady death of free speech in the West. Jada Franson has repeatedly been punished by British authorities for saying what she thinks out loud. That used to be legal. She's been banned from at least one English city for handing out anti-Islamic literature there on the grounds that her opinion caused, quote, community tension. She's been banned from any mosque in England or Wales for 3 years. She was fined more than $2,000 for saying that Muslim men commit high numbers of rape in the West. Recently, she was arrested for a speech she gave in Belfast in August. It's possible she could face charges and prison time for speaking. Just to be clear, none of that behavior was violent. Franson is being targeted by authorities because her views are unpopular. Now, you'd think this would horrify reporters here in the U.S. You'd think they would have an interest in defending free speech, but no. Instead, as you just heard, they are citing her arrest as evidence that her views ought to be suppressed. She is, quote, a hate speech person. She ought to shut up and disappear. Guardians of the First Amendment cheering on its destruction. That is terrifying, but it's not confined to Britain. Throughout the UK and Western Europe, and in Canada too, by the way, citizens have been arrested for expressing political views the authorities don't like. You didn't think that could happen, but it is happening. Last June, for example, we could give you many, German police raided dozens of homes in a coordinated effort to stamp out offensive posts on social media. The civilization that gave us free speech, the West, has suspended the concept because it conflicts with the diversity agenda. That seems like maybe the real story here. Qasim Rashid is national spokesman for the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community USA, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Rashid, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker. How are you?
So, great. So one thing I'm not going to do is get in a position to argue about the content of these videos because
it's deplorable. It's ridiculous.
You don't like them. Yeah, that's fine.
Whatever. Violence. It's nonsense. Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're ugly, whether they're real or not. If they seem real, but look, I'm not an expert.
I mean, the president's finding a new way to embarrass himself.
Here's what I'm an expert
on.
I'm an expert on the legacy of Western civilization.
Sure.
And its main legacy is the freedom of speech. You get to say what you think is true, period. And that's not the case in Europe and Canada, as you know, thanks in part to pressure from Muslim groups.
No, I don't think that's true.
Well, actually, it's literally true, and it is now a crime, as you're seeing in the cases I just mentioned, to offend people. It's literally a crime in the UK to offend people, to alarm or distress. That's the Public Order Act 1994. You can go to jail for that.
Sure.
Will you support that?
I support free speech. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the Muslims who believe in the Messiah, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, we're a worldwide Muslim community. We're in over 200 nations worldwide. And we spread because of free speech, because of free exchange of ideas. So believe me, when I say we believe in free speech, we're not just saying it as a figure of speech. We've benefited from it on a worldwide scale. Our community members are persecuted horribly in countries like Pakistan simply because we want to express
Well, then
our
you are
freedom
you are drawing the right lesson from your experience.
Absolutely.
And I applaud you for that. But I wonder if you would raise a voice in defense of a woman I'm sure you despise, the woman whose videos Trump retweeted yesterday. She's facing apparently jail time for saying things the authorities don't like. Should she be facing jail for
Well, I think if people want to criticize Islam, by all means, go ahead. I have no problem with that. People can criticize Islam to my face, and they can do it all day and every day. That's not the issue here. The issue here is we have a situation around the world where, for example, in the United States, hate crimes are at a 20-year high against Muslims.
Right.
In a country
but is expressing dislike of a religion or of a person or of an idea.
Nothing wrong with expressing dislike.
But in Europe, that qualifies as a hate crime. I'll read you the statute publicly.
No, I read the statute. I know.
Yeah, there are a couple of them.
But what we saw here was a woman who claimed that these are Muslim migrants coming up and beating up a poor Dutch boy, inciting racial tensions, inciting violence. So, what I don't want to do.
Wait, hold on. Hold on. So you are actually, because I want to pin you down, and I want you to be slippery with me.
No, I'm open.
So you're saying that she's inciting violence, so she is guilty of a crime.
What I'm saying is that when you promote deliberate false information against an already marginalized minority, just like somebody promoting myths about
Jews. She should be charged. So you're actually not for free speech.
I'm totally
I almost fell
for
for that for a second. I'm for free speech. No, but what she's saying is here's a video of something. Maybe she's wrong in the way she describes it, but you're saying what she did is a crime.
No, what I'm saying is that when somebody promotes Nazi ideology in a country where Nazis have mass murdered millions of people, I can't defend that. Maybe you can defend that. Maybe other people can defend that.
No, but you're totally missing it. And I thought you understood the concept of free speech.
No, I do understand.
You don't have to endorse an idea to believe that people ought to have a right to express it.
And I think we agree on that.
Why are you accusing me of having Nazi views when I'm just defending free speech?
I don't accuse you.
So, but really quick, we're almost out of time. I just want to get to the bottom of this. Do you think this woman should face charges? Simple.
For promoting violence, yes. If it's just criticizing Islam, no. Nobody should face.
But she's not promoting violence. She's showing a video you don't like.
She's promoting Nazi ideology.
Okay, so you're not for free speech. I'm sorry. I almost fell for the I'm for free speech. Okay, so that's not allowed. All right. What you call Nazis should be banned.
I mean, I like my Jewish friends. I don't want them to be killed by Nazis.
I hate the Nazis, but people have a right to say, not defending the Nazis. I'm defending speech. No, we're not, because you're opposed to free speech, and I'm glad I got it out of you.
I'm opposed to Nazis.
Oh, right, okay. Got it, yeah.
Interesting.
Big Nazi, okay. Up next, we'll test two top Fox News people on their knowledge of news. Final exam, next. Time now for Final Exam, where two contestants chosen from our vast stable of news experts are pitted against one another to determine which of them has been paying more attention at work. This week is Final Exam Ultimate Deathmatch Edition. Contestants Shannon Bream, host of Fox News at Night, correspondent Peter Ducey. Both are undefeated in this game, if you can even call it a game. All right, you're familiar with the rules, but for our viewers, a recap. Hands on the buzzers. I'm going to ask the questions. The first one to buzz in gets to answer the question. You must wait until I finish asking the question in order to buzz in. Each correct answer is worth 1 point. Get it wrong and you lose a point. Best of 5 wins. Now, I will say, because this is the deathmatch edition, if there is a tie, which is statistically possible, I'm going to come up with a question off the top of my head. out of nowhere, extemporaneously, and throw it at you.
Not vetted by an independent
Not vetted by any authorities or
anything?
accountants or legal team. All right? Let's hope it doesn't get to that. Question 1. Yeah. Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders was under scrutiny over Thanksgiving vacation. She shared a photograph on social media of a dish she had made at home, but at least one reporter said it looked too good to be real and accused her of faking that dish. What food did she make? Shannon Breen.
Pecan pie.
Pecan pie, also known as pecan pie. To the tape we go.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders under fire this weekend after she posted a picture of this pie. She said she baked it.
Let me tell you something. She's been making this pie for years. Don't ever mess with a Southern woman and her homemade pies.
Shannon Bream. Okay, so watching the two champions next to each other, I'm starting to understand the key to this game. You are lightning fast.
Cat-like reflexes.
You have cat-like reflexes.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Also, we used to be roommates, so I know all of his secrets. I say roommates.
Thank you for the clarification. Before we get deeper into that, question 2. Holiday flyers are furious at American Airlines, I think this country's biggest carrier. The company announced a mistake that could leave millions stranded without flights this Christmas vacation. What went wrong? Shannon Bream once again.
They did not assign pilots to the flights.
Why, that's too silly. I can't believe that's true.
Crazy, I know.
We're going to check our tape archive just to find out.
Let's do it.
The software glitch was in the system handling scheduling for American Airlines' 15,000 pilots, allowing too many to take vacation during the very busy Christmas travel season. More than 15,000 flights between December 17th and the 31st are at risk of being canceled.
Look at that. You're like an MLB pitcher. You're like Bruce Lee. You're so fast I didn't even see that happen.
Can I tell you that my family, we are flying on American during those dates. So when that story came out, I was laser
You probably just got an upgrade.
Luckily, my brother's a pilot. Not for American, but I'm going to see if he can fly our plane anyway. Why not? They need pilots.
You got the inside deal. Very nice. Question 3. There was some royal news out of England this week. Prince Harry is now engaged to an American actress called Meghan Markle. Prince Harry asked for her hand during a typical night at the royal cottage, if there is such a thing. What were they doing when he asked her to marry him? Again, Shannon Bream.
They were eating roast chicken.
That doesn't sound very royal.
I don't know if that's right. I want clarification on this. I think they were just making roast chicken, and I also think my buzzer is broken.
Well, that's what they all say.
That's what they're blaming the equipment. She's got tar on her bat. Is that what you're saying? All right, to the tape. Were they eating or making roast chicken?
Uh-oh.
It happened a few weeks ago. Just a standard, typical night for us.
It's a cozy night. It was what we're doing, just roasting chicken and having
trying to roast chicken.
Trying to roast a chicken. It was so sweet and natural and very romantic.
Okay, so our judges back in New York have weighed in and said no point awarded.
What, Evs? All right.
You say eating. They said roasting, the verb all important in this case.
Okay.
I'm channeling the judges in my ear.
I'm going to let it go this time.
The council has spoken.
This time.
All right, so it remains Tuesday. Our question 4. Big box stores across the United States are looking to cash in on a strange new holiday trend involving Christmas trees. There's something strange about these trees. What is it? Peter Ducey.
It works.
They're upside down.
That's too crazy. I don't believe you. Let's see the tape.
A new trend this holiday season, upside-down Christmas trees.
Very nice, very nice.
That's blasphemy.
I don't like that.
That is
weird,
flat out wrong, isn't it? Some of them
That
go
looks
for
like an
$1,000. I have no
or an
idea
accident
why.
waiting to happen.
No idea.
You don't want to walk underneath that thing.
Look at that. So the real question we answered is, does Peter Ducey's buzzer work?
And prove that it does.
We discovered it does.
It's like I found it under my upside down Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, so actually we're moving into a potential momentous moment
I'm
here.
still counting this as 3-1.
Okay, so but the judges, whose opinion is definitive, believe it's 2-1. So if you get this right, you have to face a tiebreaker, which is pretty tough.
Okay, my only way to win.
Final question.
I'm going to the Supreme Court with this.
Big news out of the equity markets today. The Dow hitting a new record. Which record level did the Dow just close for the first time ever? Shannon Bream.
Over 24,000.
Over 24,000. To the tape we go.
He says it like that's not good.
24,000 and market in Pennsylvania. Another major milestone falls. 24,000 right now, a little more than a month after 23,000 fell. This is the 5th time this year we've had a milestone like this broken.
You would think I would be happy to hear that it reached 24,000, but in this case,
no, I'm waiting to see if over 24,000 qualifies, and it does.
Oh, yes!
Shannon Bream, that really was. I mean, you just.
I felt like I had to go for the kill tonight because I know how good he is.
You just marched through Deuceyland, which surrendered to you. Do you know what I mean?
I did not surrender!
He did not. He went down swinging, for the record.
Well, we're out. You've won so many mugs that tonight we're going to give you something different. We're going to give you.
She's been getting mugs to win?
She has. She's got a whole set of them. But tonight we're going to give you a green beverage.
Oh, not to be displayed.
Not to be displayed on camera, right? But it's a green beverage in a green bottle,
I feel
and
fizzy in my nose
it's
when
refreshing
I
and delightful, and that is our gift to you, Shannon Bream, ladies and gentlemen, the champion
Your
of
Vanna
Final
White.
Exam.
It matches my
You do better than anyone else who's gone up against her. Don't miss another edition of Final Exam. That's next week. You can study the news all through the week. We'll be here.
Liquid gels.
Just a couple minutes ago, we were on the air. We learned something amazing about a guest we talked to last night on this show. Stephen LeDrew, he's a Canadian, joined us last night and debated the merits of inclusivity training for the LGBTTTIQQAAPP community. We had a lively disagreement, and that's great. The exchange of ideas is the heart of freedom and democracy, at least in America. Not so in Canada. LeDrew called us to inform us he has been suspended for 7 days without pay by CTV, that's Canada's largest private broadcaster. Officially, it's for going on a competing network, but LeDrew says his contract doesn't restrict that, and the decision to go on this network in particular is the real offense. He's learned the hard way how Canada views dissent. He's welcome back here anytime to tell us the details. Thanks for all of it. It's been a great hour. Sean's next.
All right, thanks, Tucker. Welcome.